The biggest difference between entrepreneurs and non-entrepreneurs is the attitude toward failure. If you're a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant or an architect, you don't want to fail. Entrepreneurs view failure as how they learn and grow. And they're this way because as they were working hard at the thing they loved, when they failed, their parents didn't punish them or express disgust or annoyance. They said, what did you learn from this? What would you do differently next time? And they learned not to be afraid to fail, and therefore they learned to be willing to take risks.
Welcome to Evoke Greatness, the podcast for bold leaders and big dreamers who refuse to settle. I'm your host, Sunny, CEO, entrepreneur, and someone who's spent over 20 years building, leading, and learning what it really takes to rise. Every step of that journey has taught me something worth passing on. Lessons in business, leadership, resilience, and the psychology behind it all. Here, you'll hear raw conversations, unfiltered truths, and the kind of wisdom that ignites something deeper in you, your courage, your conviction, and your calling. This show will help you think bigger, lead better, and show up bolder in every part of your life and business. This is your place to grow. Let's rise together. Welcome back to another episode of Evoke Greatness. What if the most important thing you could do for your child's future had nothing to do with grades or sport rankings or getting into the right school, and everything to do with how you believe in them? Today's guest spent 20 years in the government as an FTC commissioner, chief of staff of the President's Council of Economic Advisors. She's traveled the world, built nonprofits, and raised two sons, one who founded The Summit, the iconic entrepreneurial conference series, and another who fronts the alt band Magic Giant. And somewhere along the way, she started noticing a pattern. Every young entrepreneur she met said the same thing when she asked how they got there. Someone believed in me. Usually, it was their mom. That obsession became a decade of research, interviews with 70 entrepreneurs and their families, and a book that has quietly become the guide for parents who want more than conventional success for their kids. She wants to raise children who are confident, creative, fearless, and resilient, and deeply fulfilled. She's the author of Raising an Entrepreneur, How to Help Your Children Achieve Their Dreams, a sought-after speaker, and a mom who practiced what she preached. As the mom of two boys myself, who are 14 and 18, and they are just cresting the time in their lives when they're thinking about these very topics, I'm so excited to be able to welcome Margot Machol Bisnow to the show. Welcome.
Thanks, Sunny. Actually, I didn't practice what I preach because I wasn't preaching it when I was practicing it.
Fair point. Now you're helping us practice.
I actually practiced it without knowing what I was doing.
That's right.
And only when I looked back and realized what I was doing that I realized I was doing it okay.
And I bet your boys would probably say more than okay. But yeah. I love the point of clarification because it is sometimes in the moment, we're in the thick of it, we don't know.
Right.
I know there are often times where it's like, am I doing the right things?
Right. You have no idea what's going through it. And I mean,
right.
No, you have no idea.
You're right. We're doing our best and showing up our very best each day, right? And it's one day at a time.
Right.
As I mentioned before we hit the record button, I really, really personally was looking forward to this. And I love having a podcast because those things that I'm personally looking forward to, I actually get to share with all the listeners as well. So it's such a gift. You had this whole high-powered government career. FTC commissioner, White House advisor. When did parenting start to feel like the most important work you'd do?
I guess it was about 17 years ago, which seems like a long time. My older son, Elliot, as you mentioned, he started this organization called Summit or Summit Series, which was conferences of young entrepreneurs. So as you said, I hadn't met people like that back then. I just hadn't. In the beginning, they were mostly, under 35 and doing all these amazing things. And I was so curious how they had turned out. And I asked them, and as you said, they all told me the same thing. They all said someone believed in me and told me I could do anything I put my mind to. And I was just so like blown away by this. And I just kept talking about it. And the kid said, you have to write a book. I'm like, I can't write a book. And there's, no, you have to write a book. And I said, I can't write a book. Anyhow, they wore me down. In fact, they wrote the foreword to the book and they said, everyone needs someone to believe in them. And sometimes that's even your kids.
I love that.
So I decided to write a book and to be really organized about it. And I did lots of research, as you said, and read lots of other people's books and just interviewed lots and lots of people. And I wanted and I was kind of, I don't know what I'm going to find, but I wanted a really diverse group. So half men, half women, every race, religion, socioeconomic background, born overseas, born here, married parents, single moms, divorced parents, big cities, small towns, big families, only kids, like everything I could think of, and going into all sorts of different kinds of professions, not just for profit. And I was shocked that they were all raised the same. I can't tell you, it just like knocked my socks off. And then I just wanted to shout it from the rafters because there's so many unhappy kids in the world.
Absolutely.
And I want to shout to their parents, like, I know you think what you're doing is the right thing to do. I know you think that if you do this that worked for you, it'll work for them. And it's a different world. And you can't force them to do what worked for you. Maybe it'll work. Maybe it doesn't. You have to watch, you have to listen, you have to look. And if they don't want to do that, you have to figure out what they do want to do and let them do that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. My husband and I were literally just having a conversation last night about, reflections of the way we were raised, which is very different than the way we're raising our kids. And I had told him I had read something somewhere. We oftentimes ask our kids to do chores, hey, I want you to contribute. And this story that I read said, remember, when you ask your child to vacuum the house, you're asking them to vacuum with 30 or 40 years of experience. When you ask them to vacuum, they don't have any experience in it. So instead of just telling your kids to do something, think about the fact that they're coming to some of these situations with no experience whatsoever. And that has made me look at parenting so much differently because we just assume like, come on, it's vacuuming. You should know how to do it. I mean, this has been a handful of years ago that we started asking our boys to contribute, but then we'd go, what are you doing? You're not even vacuuming right. And so it's funny when we stop and we think about the experience that our kids bring to it versus ours, it's very different. So I love that you say that. And you're right. There are a lot of unhappy kids out there. And it's really, really important that we pay attention to that so that we can start to impact that outcome.
So my dad was a professor. I grew up in university towns. It never actually crossed my mind that it was an option that I'd have a kid who didn't at least graduate from college. I have an MBA. My husband has a law degree. It's just like what we did, right? And so Elliot, halfway through his junior year, called me and told me he was taking a semester off.
I love the air quotes.
I kind of knew he'd never go back. And I was horrified because the way I grew up, it's like, if you don't have a college degree, how can you be successful in life? And it like took such a deep gulp on my part. And the crazy thing is, so he had started working for my husband's startup in the summer between his sophomore and junior year. And he kept, working on it in the fall. And that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to get on with his life. And the thing that's crazy is he was really interested in becoming an entrepreneur. And he didn't think he was cool enough that, these cool young entrepreneurs would talk to him. And so in April of 2008, a month before he would have graduated from college, he cold called 18 young entrepreneurs whose names he'd found like in, Inked and Wired and Forbes, all the under 30 list. And it's people like Blake Mykowski from Tom's Shoes and Sam Altman from OpenAI. And I mean, these people who have gone on to do big things. And it was just going to be like this one-off. And they all said, oh my God, they'd never met anybody like themselves before. And they said, you have to do this again. We want to bring 5 friends. And it hit me when I was writing the book. If I'd forced him to stay in school for another year and a half, not studying classes that he was no longer interested in, the moment would have passed him by. Someone else would have had a get-together of young entrepreneurs under 30. And someone else would have done it. And he never could have had this incredible impact. We just had Summit at Sea, 2,000 people sailing around for 3 days. I swear, 100 times I'd sit down at a meal and someone would look at my name tag and go like, "My God, you're Elliot's mom? Summit changed my life." Seriously. And like if I had done what I wanted to do, which is say, "No, you have to stay in college," it never would have happened. It's like such a lesson.
Absolutely. It's not, and I think our perspective overall probably shifts based on our lived experiences, right? And the hard part is letting them have those freedoms of what do you really want to do? And knowing that that can either come with they're going to launch and do well, could have been that he did that. He called all those entrepreneurs up. He got them out there and it didn't work, right? But it did. He put forth the effort. I love the fact that it was like a kind of a burn the boats, like I'm going all in on this. I absolutely love that because the kind of wisdom and maturity around that of taking a chance and a risk. There are people who are in their 50s who could never take a chance or a risk like that.
Right.
I'm so glad it paid off. As Elliot has brought you to these summit gatherings over the years and to this event, and you continue to ask people, like you just mentioned, how they became who they were. What was the moment when you realized that there was this pattern? How did that click in your brain to say, wait a second? Like, what led you to reaching out to more people and having all the dynamics?
So I had no idea what I would find when I
Okay.
interviewed these people. And my kids said, "You should write down like what you think the rules are." So I wrote down my rules, which turned out not to be anybody else's rules. Like, we always ate dinner together every night. And my rule was like, people would say, "What time to eat?" And I'd say, "When the last person walks in the door." We did this every single night. Nobody else did this. Like, it was like just my rule. And a lot of people, like, there were so many things they were so much better at than I was. Certainly in terms of being philanthropic. We weren't so good at that. And almost every one of these people, it was really important in their life to give to others. There were a lot of ways that they were, I think, better than I was. But the thing that struck me is I would just make notes at the end of each conversation of the basic points they said. And then I looked at it when I'm done. I'm like, oh my God, like they're all saying the same thing, And I was just like, whoa.
What were some of those similarities of things that they said? I'm curious because you think about of all the different backgrounds that you gave, right? Single parent raising them, married parents, in the country, not in the country. Like that's a diverse group. So you had such a good sampling of people with all different backgrounds and upbringings. What were those similarities that you found?
So the number one thing is that every single one of them had a passion outside of school. And every parent eventually supported that passion. Sometimes it took a big gulp, but eventually the parents supported that passion. And I've read a lot of people saying, oh, you don't want to go into what you're passionate about. You want to go into what you're good at. But I think that really misses the point. The point is that if you're passionate about something that you've chosen, you're working really hard at it. And because you're working really hard at it, you're getting good at it. And when you fail, you're pivoting and you're figuring it out and you're becoming resilient and you're learning about grit and you're learning about resourcefulness and you're learning about the trade-off between hard work and results. And you're learning all these important things that eventually, when you grow up, you will use. I would say 30-40% of these kids, it was sports. None of them is a professional athlete. It doesn't matter. What the skills they learned in sports are the skills they used. And my son Elliot was actually honored by the tennis center where he had trained for what he had done off the court, not on the court. He trained at the same place that Francis Tiafoe, if you've heard of him, came from. And he said, everything I am today is because of tennis. I didn't really care about school. I didn't work hard at school. Tennis is where I learned grit and focus and resilience and hard work and tenacity. And, so many of these kids, it was sports, some sport, but so many others, it was something else. It was cooking. It was entering rap concert contests. It was running for student government. It was selling things. It was a million different, it was acting. It was singing. It was, a million things. The point is that because they had this passion, they worked really, really hard and they gained confidence in their ability to be successful when they worked hard. And their parents, to me, it's the biggest difference between entrepreneurs and non-entrepreneurs is the attitude toward failure. If you're a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant or an architect, you don't want to fail. Entrepreneurs view failure as how they learn and grow. And they're this way because as they were working hard at the thing they loved, when they failed, their parents didn't punish them or express disgust or annoyance. They said, what did you learn from this? What would you do differently next time?
Yeah.
And so,
it's like
they
a
learned.
playground.
Right. And they learn not to be afraid to fail, and therefore they learn to be willing to take risks. And if you're afraid to take risks, you can't be an entrepreneur.
Right, right. I love what team sports of any sort, sports in general, I think there's a level of discipline that is ingrained in kids who participate in sports. There's also a sense of these transferable skills, like you mentioned, that are very applicable to life. I
Right.
distinctly remember a time, I remember I posted on LinkedIn about it, like while I was still on the football field. My younger son, I think he was probably 10, and he was on a flag football team, and he was the quarterback. And he was pausing before he'd throw the ball. And it became clear to one of his teammates. And she pulled him aside and she said, hey, this is two 10-year-olds talking on the sidelines, not knowing anybody's listening. She said, hey, I need you to not pause. Do you trust me? And he said, yeah, I trust you. She said, do you trust me to catch the ball? He said, yes, I trust you. She said, then act like it out there. I need you to not pause or hesitate. I need you to trust the fact that I'm going to catch it when you throw it. And I'm like, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And I just thought, wow, if these are the conversations at 10 years old, these two kids right here will be so much better off at 20 and 30 years old because of what they're experiencing and how they're interpreting it today. It was such a cool experience to actually like be an observer of.
And how much better that it came from his teammate and not from you.
Would have never heard it. He would have never
Right.
heard it from me. But because
Right.
it was someone that he was out on the field with, and that's the beauty of those relationships where you can trust someone to give you that type of feedback. And he didn't go, oh no, I throw it. I didn't hesitate. She said, do you trust me? He said, I trust you. She said, then don't hesitate. Throw me the ball and trust that I'm going to catch it. And it was amazing. But you're right. It is sometimes in who is giving that feedback to us as well. Okay, quick pause to tell you about my partners at Row Nutrition. I came to them as a customer first. I have both Hashimoto's and I am smack dab in the middle of perimenopause. Their liposomal supplements have been a game changer for my brain fog, fatigue, and inflammation. I'm currently taking their NAD+, glutathione, and curcumin, and I recently added in both collagen and creatine. Anyone who knows me knows I only put my name behind what I actually use, and Row has earned it. You can use the code SUNNY15 SONNIE15 for 15% off at rownutrition.com, or you can click the link in the show notes and it'll take you right there. All right, let's hop back into the episode.
Right. And another thing I have is almost every one of these kids had a mentor growing up. And it's exactly what you're saying is that the advice, it's so much better if it doesn't come from your parent.
Yeah. That's very true. That's very true. I remind my husband all the time. I say, remember, like how much did we value the advice our parents were giving us when we were teenagers? We didn't. We were sure we figured it all out.
Right.
Well, you talk about well-intentioned parents who actually boomerang, their efforts backfire.
Yes.
What's the most common way you saw parents accidentally crush the very thing that they were trying to build?
Well, when they tell their child who failed that they didn't really fail.
That's interesting.
Well, it wasn't your fault. It was the other person. You didn't do anything wrong. I'll make it go away. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
That's terrible. Like, no, you screwed up. Let's figure it out. Why did you do it? What would you do differently next time? What did you learn? How could you change?
It's interesting. I thought you were going to go the other way of being too hard on them. But you know what? Like, as soon as you said that, you're right. We have societally gotten to like this participation trophy / lack of accountability. It's never Johnny's fault. It's always everybody else's fault. And you're so right. That's really interesting.
And I mean, my favorite example of, to me, like the worst thing a parent can do is, do you remember the college admission scandal? When these parents were paying somebody else to take the tests and doctor up the application. So basically, and so many people were saying, oh, these rich kids, they have so many advantages. And I was thinking, oh my God, what these parents were saying to their kids were, if the school knew the real you, they wouldn't want you. So we have to pretend you're somebody different from what you are, because if you don't get into this school, you can't be a success in life, and you can't get into this school if they know who you are. Can you imagine a more catastrophic thing to commit to say to your child?
Right. Yeah. When
As
it's more
opposed
about,
to, let's find a school where you can thrive, where the
right.
school's going to love you. If this one doesn't like you, you don't want to go there. You want to go where you're going to be great and where they're going to love who you are because you are great. I just think, okay, how awful when the kid realized that's what their parent was saying to them.
Right, right. But it's those unintended consequences, right? It's when it becomes a thing that a parent is driving, and that's too is kind of the societal shift. I remember back when I was younger, if I was playing sports, a lot of times my mom wasn't able to come. She was busy working. I was raised by a single mom, and so she was working a couple of jobs, and we figured it out.
Right. You
It
figured it out.
figured it out. And nowadays it's our kids are in 10 sports and nobody has a life because you go straight from school to 6 different sports and back to back. And it's like, it really does. Those sports do add something. We're also like overwhelming and I think it's oftentimes the parent that's driving it more than the child.
Right.
Which that too, what are we telling our kids through that?
Right. And I'll talk to parents of high school kids and I'll say, what's your kid's passion? And they're like, gee, I don't really know. And I'm just thinking, okay, you're just not paying attention, because they're giving off hints of what they love and what they're good at and what gives them joy nonstop. And I feel like the most important thing for us as a parent is to figure out what our kid's gift is and then to nurture that. I have a grandchild who, when he was in his kindergarten class, all the kids had drawn on the wall a picture of, what they wanted to be when they grew up. These are 5-year-olds. I want to be a nurse. I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a fisherman. I want to be a farmer. Whatever it was, they already had something in them that said, this is what appeals to me. I was at a dinner with his parents and some dancers came out and he looked at them for like 2 minutes and said, I'm bored, I want to leave. And I said to his parents, like, another kid would be, my God, that's so cool, I want to take lessons.
Right.
Like, you just have to look. You just have to listen. And I think going back to what you said, Sunny, I mean, his parents are saying like, stop spending so much time on whatever it is, writing music, painting, sewing, knitting, cooking, playing the guitar, playing the piano, playing tennis, whatever it is, and go in and study your trigonometry. Why? Do we really, really need trigonometry? How many times have you used trigonometry in your life? So I think that we squash it. We tell them what you're doing in that isn't important.
Right.
Go do your studies because that's important. And I mean, I think when you said I sort of practiced what I preached, and I said I didn't know what I was preaching until after it was over, but both our kids had a passion growing up outside of school. For Elliot, it was tennis, and for Austin, it was writing music. He wrote 300 songs in high school. They were just grinding out. And I saw, and neither of them was a particularly great student, but we were so proud of them for how hard they were working the thing that they loved, and so we didn't, even though we were both like super academic ourselves growing up, we just didn't push it that much. And, it's worked out really well for both of them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I'd say so. There's a version of raising an entrepreneur that sounds like pressure. The side hustles at 10 or the pitching ideas at dinner. But that's clearly not what you mean. Where's the line between that nurturing the spirit and turning childhood into a grind? Kind of the two opposite ends of the spectrum we're just talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can't make a child an entrepreneur. I don't think you can make a child anything. And You can't send an incurious child to entrepreneur camp. You can't, if your kid has an idea I've helped like judge these things that kids make with different people's organizations. And the parents are like, it's the parents' thing. And the kids are just, no, that's not the point. The point is not for the parents to help the kids make something the parents have thought up. And then, that's not the point. You don't have to be selling things in junior high, in middle school, and high school to become an entrepreneur. You have to be working hard at something you love. And I just think parents, they kind of don't get it. Of the 70 entrepreneurs that are featured in this book, only 5 have a sibling who's an entrepreneur. And all 5 have another sibling who's not an entrepreneur. So the point is, you can't make your child an entrepreneur. You can set up the conditions to make them more entrepreneurial. Being an entrepreneur is hard. It's taking on a lot of risk. It's working like 1,000 a week. Not everybody wants that. That's sort of not the point. The point is you want to set up the conditions. So if they choose that to do with their life, they'll have that sort of ability. And if they don't, they'll be more entrepreneurial in whatever they do. Maybe they'll be an entrepreneurial librarian. That's great. Maybe they'll be an entrepreneurial kindergarten teacher. That's great. Whatever you do, if you're entrepreneurial, that's all a parent can do. And so I think, like, instead, work to make them curious. Work to make them think, what could I do differently? What happened today that I could change? What was a good thing that happened? If I could change anything I saw today, what would it be and why would it be and how would I do it? Like, entrepreneurs become entrepreneurs because they're curious. And in general, they start doing something and they get really good at it. And then they think, there's this one aspect of it that could be done differently, that I could change, that I could adjust, that I could, do a different version of. That's how you become an entrepreneur. One of the people in the book, Eric Ryan, he started Method Products. He said he'd go into the grocery store and all of the cleaning products were disgusting. They were stinky and full of chemicals and unattractive. And he thought, why? Why can't I have cleaning products that are in a pretty container and that smell nice and aren't full of like disgusting chemicals? He was a sailor. He sailed all through college. He wasn't selling things. He was sailing. So another one of my favorite stories, Joel Holland, who had one company, Video Blocks, and he sold it. And he got an RV and was traveling around the country. And he was staying at all these like kind of ugly RV parks. And he was passing all these beautiful farms and vineyards and thinking, why can't I stay there? Like, there should be a program for people in RVs to stay at cool places. So now he has harvest hosts where RVs can stay at cool places. All of these people, they sort of got interested in something. And then they realized that there was something about it that was missing or that was wrong or that could be done differently.
And they believed that there was a potential that they could actually impact it. I think that's the piece. What's the saying? Most people die when they're 75, but they've been, they haven't been living for the last 25 years. I think being averse to risk and being certain that this idea would never work because it's different than the one that exists today.
Okay, stay with me for just a second before you go. Living with Hashimoto's and being in the middle of perimenopause means brain fog shows up in the middle of conversations, decisions, and moments that matter. And I refuse to stay there. I'm very selective about what I put in my body. Intentional. So when Meraki Blue came to me wanting to support this community, I said yes because I already believed in what they do. Methylene Blue, mitochondrial health, cognitive performance, mental clarity. It works for me. I want it to work for you too. Meraki Blue is giving the Evoke Greatness community 20% off. Use the code Evoke Greatness, all caps, no spaces at checkout. I promise you, your brain isn't broken. It's just waiting on the right support.
If today's episode challenged you, moved you, or lit a fire in your soul, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who's ready to rise in their leadership, their business, and their life. And if you haven't already, I'd be so grateful if you took 30 seconds to rate and review the podcast. It's one of the most powerful ways to support the show and help us reach more bold leaders like you. Because this isn't just a podcast, it's a movement. We're not here to play small. We're here to lead loud and elevate how we think, lead, and execute, one bold and unapologetic step at a time. Until next time, stay bold, stay grounded, and make moves that make mediocre uncomfortable.